You know,
You know,
they were the ultimate garage punk band in the 60s.
Stopping me, touching you, watching that, loving you. Paranoia, de-destroyer. Paranoia, de-destroyer.
I see you have a Patriarchs in Black
I sure do.
shirt on.
I sure do.
My buddy Johnny Kelly.
I know. I'm going to ask you about him in just a minute here. Well, I guess we could. Well, I guess we could start with that Destroyer. I mean, let's get into it. You the latest single video for Destroyer, obviously the great cover from the great Kinks.
Yeah.
Just one of those bands that I think a lot of people always overlook when they talk about vintage classic rock.
They were the ultimate garage punk band in the 60s.
Mhm.
And of course 70s they did their thing, and they had a lot of pop stuff going on. But I remember as a kid when I heard Destroyer, that was probably 43 years ago, when that came out, 79, 80. I thought it was amazing. So what happened was Cleopatra had asked us to they're like, you should do a duet with Jyrki from the 69 Eyes. I'm like, how did two guys do a duet, right? So I'm like thinking of songs, and I'm like, what can it be? And I said to Dan, I'm like, you know what? I got an idea. How about we do Destroyer from the Kinks, and him and I can trade off. And we also did on the CD, there's another cover song. There's Long Cool Woman by the Hollies.
Yep.
And we did that with him as well. So it was like, I got to pick, I didn't know if one was going to come out and one didn't come out good, but I like them both. So,
yeah,
I'm like, the hell, let's do it.
Yeah, no, they came out.
Blood on her fingernails by the way she kisses.
Yeah, his voice is amazing because he can get down really low like that.
Oh yeah, awesome, man. Yeah, Long Cool Woman. Let's talk about that too. Like you said, the Hollies. I mean, that was just a staple of my childhood, man. That song was on my dad's mixed cassette tapes, like left and right, man. I mean, did you guys now? These are two UK bands from the '60s. Was this sort of a way to want to sort of, I guess, maybe pay a little homage to some of these older bands that no one really talks about much? Or
I think especially for a band like the Hollies, right? I mean, again, I look at it, it's just whatever hits a nerve with me is what really is what I like. And as Dan calls it, my ADD supreme, it's like, in order for me to get through a whole song, it's got to really hit a nerve. So that's exactly why I picked that song.
Yeah. But you've liked that song for years.
Yeah. Since I was
talked about it.
Since I was a little kid, that song would come on the radio. It's got some element to it that we don't find in music anymore, right? It's that there's just nothing but hooks in it, and it just catches you and keeps you.
Yeah, it's a story song. He's telling a story.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, I read actually that song was kind of, it was influenced by Green River, Creedence, and if you listen to it, it's got a really similar vibe to it.
Oh, wow.
They were, I just researching and doing my thing for this. I actually found that out. So just a nugget. And it does similar. It sounds a little similar, so it's got that that vibe. But like you said, great song. It sticks in your head.
Yeah,
it doesn't leave it. Yeah, absolutely. So let's talk. Just going back to Destroyer real quick, guys. I mean, like you just kind of talked about, Steve. You got Johnny Kelly from the Mighty Typo Negative, obviously, and Patriarchs in Black. He's on drums there. You got the great Tommy Victor from Prong playing guitar. Two I know of your bandmates from Danzig, Dan. Of course, like you said, you got Jyrki from the 69 Eyes. So, I mean, what was the reason, I guess, to get them all onto one song, maybe instead of kind of different ones?
I figured, okay, so we're going to have one guy on there from a pretty well-known, European, whatever you want to call 69 Eyes metal. I don't know if they're really metal, but, they have that interesting sound of that, metal goth, the whole thing.
Helsinki Vampires.
Yes. So I figured, you know what? Let's ask Tommy and Johnny if they'll do it as well. And they both obviously, really enjoyed doing it. Tommy at the time had become a new dad. So just getting him to play, because at that point he hadn't even picked up a guitar for almost a year, was during COVID. And he wound up, setting some stuff on just to get us his tracks. And I was grateful that he did it. And, and Johnny, of course, is one of my best friends, and, would do anything for me as I would for him. So we were blessed to have both of them, or all three of them at that point. So.
Met a girl called Lola and I took her back to my place. Feeling guilty, feeling scared, hidden cameras everywhere. Stop! Hold on. Stay in control. Girl, I want you here with me, 'cause I'm really not as cool as I'd like to be. 'Cause there's a red under my bed, and there's a little yellow man in my head, and there's a true blue inside of me that keeps stopping me, touching you, watching you, loving you. Paranoia, de-destroyer. Paranoia, de-destroyer. Well, I fell asleep, then I woke feeling kind of queer. Lola looked around and said, "Ooh, you look so weird." She said, "Man, there's really something wrong with you. One day you're gonna self-destruct. You're up, you're down, I can't work you out. You get a good thing going and you blow yourself out. Silly boy, you self-destroyer. Silly boy, you self-destroyer. Silly boy, you got so much to live for, so much to hate for, so much to try for. You're blowing away with paranoia. You're so insecure, you're self-destroyer. It goes like this. Paranoia, de-destroyer. Paranoia, de-destroyer. Doctor, help her, please, I know you understand. There's a time device inside of me, I'm a self-destructing man. There's a red under my bed, and there's a little green man in my head. She said, "You're not going crazy, you're just a bit sad, twisted up man, and you're on you, turn you down. Silly boy, you're self-destroyer. Paranoia, de-destroyer. Self-destroyer, wreck to hell. Destroy your friends, destroy yourself. The time device of self-destruction, like the fusion, start eruption. Paranoia, de-destroyer. It's the paranoia. Paranoia, de-destroyer. Paranoia, de-destroyer. It goes like this. Paranoia, de-destroyer. And it goes like this.
Absolutely. Well, let's talk about The Waiting, the new record, you guys' sophomore release. Out now, like you said, on Cleopatra Records. Definitely, it's similar, obviously, to the first record, Love and Anger, that came out back in 2016. But I mean, just to me, when I listen to it, I think it's a bit more sort of aggressive and a little bit heavier than Love and Anger. To me, Love and Anger was really just a straight up good old rock and roll record with a lot of punk influences. But to me, Waiting's just got a little bit darker, a little heavier side to it. Was there anything particular you guys wanted to do differently on this record than Love and Anger?
I think for me, I mean, it's an interesting way that Dan and I work. And it's like we get these ideas, we come down. If it's my idea, I hum it to him, and he has to take that and decipher what that hum is.
Oh man.
And he's done real good with what's going on in my head. I can kind of hear the way it's supposed to be. I already know what the final thing is going to be in my head before we even start recording it.
Okay.
And he kind of figures that out, and we kind of, and it meshes really well, right? Because there's no musical masturbation here. We're writing and playing for the song. A lot of times in the past, where you get a lot of different members of a band, they're not listening for the song, they're listening for their part. And being that him and I are doing the whole thing, we're not listening for our part. We are the parts. So we have to, we have to listen to the song. And I think the difference between this and Love and Anger is like, this was more, I think in my head, a darker place. We were doing a lot of this recording during COVID. One of the songs, there's a song on there. Actually, I believe it's The Waiting.
Yeah.
The lead in The Waiting was an interesting story, and I'll tell you why. As we were recording, Dan was trying to do the lead, and he kept it was a challenge for him to do it, and he kept complaining about his arm. And I'm like, oh, come on, power through it. Who knows what he did. Wound up, he was in heart failure. So he did finish the lead.
I did finish it. And you Facebook Live that thing.
Right. And a few days later, he was in the hospital getting a quadruple bypass.
Shit.
Yeah,
wow.
So that was an interesting time.
7.5 hours surgery, quadruple bypass.
Yeah.
Wow, man. How you doing now, Dan? Everything okay?
Yeah, no, I'm okay.
Yeah.
It's but I would say to anybody, it's not because I went to Hooters like once or twice a month. Like I had a very, 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 very stressful job. Very extremely stressful. I'm not going to go into it, but extremely stressful. And stress accumulates in your body. Your body reacts to it as damage. Your body produces cholesterol to repair the damage, but if there isn't any physical damage there, it'll just build up. And just said, so if you're feeling stress, find some ways to get with it, either candles, bubbling music, walk, do some
or The Waiting.
Or listen to The Waiting, and I'm sure that'll help calm you down quite a bit.
Oh man, wow! Well, I'm glad you're all right, Dan. I mean, that's quite the way to find out, though, that you've obviously got that.
I don't have any tattoos, but I'm a member of the Zipper Club.
Oh man, well, like I said, I'm glad you're okay, man. So musically, you guys, once again, when I listen to The Waiting, I don't. Like I said, it's not a metal or even a straight up punk record. I was, every time I listened to it, I was trying to figure out what would I guess class of, or whatever you want to, I wouldn't say, label it, but what would be the closest thing to label your guys' sound? To me, it's like a sort of I like to call it like sleaze rock. It kind of has like, reminds me of that like late 80s sound that was coming out of the New York, New Jersey area, like Circus of Power, that whole little, that era, between about 88 to about 91.
Right.
But then again, you got songs like Love of Hate of Pain, which I think is a great song. And that's has more of I think a heavier punk influence on it. Sort of like a Chelsea Smiles type of vibe to it. I mean, so would you guys now, just as you talked about before, Steve, when you hum something, Dan, sits there and I guess he works with that. But I mean, is that really how all these ideas start? Really, with you just coming up straight with that, and then that's how it works? Really, wow.
Well, what we do is that it's definitely a co-writing partnership. Like sometimes I'll sit in a lounge chair in my home studio bedroom, and I'll have a guitar or a bass on while I'm just watching documentaries or whatever, and I noodle around and I'll come up with a riff, and much like he does, I put the voice memo on it, and then I'll bring it down. And I'll bring down either if it's a riff, and then he'll come down. He said, "Oh, I have a song," and sometimes we put them together. And then, but what he talked about saying before, when he has his idea, he has it in his head what he hears, and of course then I have to try and interpret it and figure out, like when it comes to a certain like incidentals and things like that, he goes, well, why don't you do this, and then you okay, all right, we go, and then it just builds up layer upon layer, but there's no intention like, oh, we want to sound like this, or we want to sound like that.
I think
it's kind of organic.
It's I think if you listen to the album is like a roller coaster, and it takes you, it's here and it was on purpose for that, again, to keep my own attention for my own, for our own songs. I have to keep my own attention because I'm just like all over the place. But again, it works, and our process works. There's no drama to be had. We have songs that didn't make it. There, you write songs, you record them, and you go, I don't know, maybe we'll revisit it. We have a lot of things to revisit, and what the bad thing is, owning our own studio here, it's good and bad. We do songs, and I just label them new song.
Yeah, new song.
New song. New song. So, if I go looking, on my hard drives, I have nothing but new songs. So I have to go by date and go back. Oh, remember this one? So, but for the most part, once we usually start a song, it'll take us a few days, and we'll come back and forth, and we'll just finish it and be done with it and put it to bed. It's just easier that way.
Yeah. And I would say 9 times out of 10, like we started going, and then it takes its own kind of shape. And then when we're done with it, we listen back to it. It's like, wow, that's a lot better than I thought it was.
And you were saying, what is it that we sound like? As Dan said, I don't know.
Yeah,
now, a lot of people have said that I sound like Ian Astbury.
Yes.
I don't hear it, but that's just me. I mean, obviously, I don't mind being in that company, because Ian's a great vocalist. I don't hear it, but I come from predominantly a punk rock background. So my upbringings were, my mom played 50s music. I got into Kiss and Elvis, and then punk rock. I skipped the whole metal parts of where everybody was, into metal. I was into punk. And this was early on in the late 70s. Dan comes from more of a classic and a prog background, where he'll play a song that's a 10-minute song, and I'm like, please change this fucking thing. Where's the chorus? And but I think when we marry both ideas up, it works, because he brings an element to my simplicity way of writing and thinking. Because to me, simple is better, right? Because I don't really want to write tons of songs with all these chord changes, because I love melody. I love melodies and harmonies and stuff. And when you have all the changes, there's no room to fit anything, and then it becomes musical masturbation. And I just don't like that. That bores me. So Danzig taught me one thing. He goes, whatever you write and whatever you put out, you're the one that has to be happy, because at this point it lives on forever somewhere, right? And I'm the one that has to be happy. I'm the artist, and hopefully if it makes me happy, it'll make other people happy. Not everybody's gonna like everything. That's why we have all different genres and all different bands and whatnot. But I think the reaction has been pretty good. Again, I think it takes you for a ride, and there's elements of pretty much everything in there.
Yeah. Now, I wanted, because you just said about how having your own studio now. Now, you like simplicity. Dan likes a little more complex. Do you guys sit there and kind of just, go at each other's throats? Because, in terms of how short or how long the song could be, especially when you got your own studio, right? You don't have any time constraints or nothing. Do you find it hard to agree on finally, okay, this is enough, this is good? Or is there just a lot of reworking parts and so forth with the songs with you guys?
There's not a lot of that. In other words, once you get the basic foundation, the framework, I tell them it's like Bob Ross doing a painting.
Mhm.
You know, it's like, okay, we're going to start out with this, and we're going to do a basic rhythm track, maybe with some drums, and we're going to add some bass, and and then eventually it kind of takes on a life of its own. There's, a couple of times and very early on, because when from the last group that we had together, I was kind of like just the bass player, and I wasn't really involved in the writing. I would come up with my parts and background vocals and stuff. So I kind of felt like Dave Grohl in Nirvana, like I wasn't utilized this, but this is different. And I just said, okay, I'll play guitar, because I can play guitar, but I don't play guitar that anybody knew. And came in, and he of course plays the drums and been playing for years. And in the beginning, when he'd sit there and he'd give me an idea, I'd be just like, okay, and then as you build up your confidence and you build up your repertoire and how we work together. Now this is an idea, that's an idea. We put them together, we work on them, and it's none of this of like, well, that thing sucks. It's not. It's never that.
Now we've never had that, and again, it's not one of those things where he'll go, "Oh, that's not going to work." I think collectively, after we finish the song, we'll go, that's okay, and then we'll, maybe put it away. Like I said, just because we write and record a song doesn't mean we have to keep it. So, we're, like you said, fortunately, we don't the time, when you go to a studio and you have to pay for a studio. Time is money, and the money is yours. So you have to have your shit together. Otherwise, you're spending and wasting time and writing songs in the studio. That's all well and good if you can afford that. Both Dan and I have invested thousands upon thousands of dollars of gear, world-class gear, and the only thing that's ours that we have is to waste is our own time. So it works out really good. Because I don't mind wasting time in the studio. It's my place. I love it.
Sure.
But when we're down here, we're working. We're not, we're not just sitting around, looking at our phones or doing whatever. It's, there's none of that.
Yeah, no doubt. Yeah. Well, time is still money, right? Even if you own your own studio, it's still time. So yeah, exactly. So great. So Steve, I'm going to go back to your vocals. I do hear Ian Astbury, absolutely, but it's not like it's just Ian Astbury. Like I said, it kind of fluctuates. It goes back and forth. You've got different styles the way you sing. So I guess to me, for your approach then vocally on the tracks, I mean, how do you approach it? Do you take it sort of, I guess, song by song? How do you, I guess, use your approach depending on how the style of the song is? There's a lyrical content and all. Does that drive any of the music that you hum out today in there? Talk about your approach then to the vocals.
When I write vocals, actually, it's the harder part of the actual writing process, because I write the melody before I write the words.
Okay.
Right. So, and that's everybody's different. But then it's like, excuse me. Then it's like, it's the almighty subject. What are we writing about? Now, look, I don't have the same anger as I did when I was 18 or 15. I'm angry about different things, but it's not just anger. There's all kinds of things involved. There's everyday life. There's relationships, good or bad. There's hardships, good or bad. And I say good or bad in hardships. There are good hardships. There's shit that happens to you that winds up being a blessing in disguise, and for many reasons. So I also look at hardships as sometimes they're really good things. So there's a little bit of everything in how we approach it, but I approach it from a melody standpoint first.
Okay.
Then we add to it.
Okay.
Yeah. So like just when we're working on the things, when it comes to a guitar part or a solo or something like that, he's kind of like leading me to his vision and coaching. And then when he does his vocal tracks, I'll listen to, because like I grew up in music departments and I played a bunch of different instruments and I sang in lots of choirs and all the rest of that kind of stuff. So when I'm hearing his performance, I'll be like, that's really good. maybe let's work on that. That one's better. You got a better one in you, that kind of thing. So as he coaches me on one thing, I kind of coach him on the other thing. And because sometimes when you're in the middle, when you're doing it and you're just thinking about doing it, you can't hear it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and then, but he'll objectively hear it. But you know, and that's like sometimes think this, he'll just go, no,
that's not it.
It's not it.
But he's a great vocal producer because again, he knows how to get it out of me.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes I just, you know, I'm not hearing it because I'm singing it. So, and having that, his set of ears again, because he's, you know, done choir and all that kind of stuff when he was younger, you know, you come from a different point of view. So it works. Sure. It works pretty well.
I even sang barbershop in high school.
Oh, wow. In barbershop. Huh?
Maybe
cover that.
We need to do a metal barber.
Yeah. There you go. Well, I want to get you guys' opinions on something, you know, just in general here. You know, I mean, as we know, you know, rock music no longer very mainstream. You know, it obviously here in the States. I mean, it's still a you know, one of the top selling, you know, genres of music, but its impact really on the culture. Just really, I don't know if I'd say non-existent, but it's very minimal, I would say at this point. And it's kind of gone back underground. You know, it's a lot. I mean, just like a lot of musical genres over the years have, right? I mean, look at jazz, classical music, big band, all of it, right? All wanes in popularity, you know, over time. So when I hear you guys do the covers of the Kinks and the Hollies, it really kind of brings me back to the sort of roots of rock, you know, as we know it today. And to me, it's sad that it just doesn't really have that mass appeal that it once did. But I also find that at the same time, it being more underground really kind of keeps it a little more genuine and real in a lot of ways. It doesn't get all watered down like things tend to do, obviously, when they go mainstream. A few guys just, you know, I mean, you know, being in the music business for so long, I mean, especially, you know, I know in the 80s there, Steve, when you were obviously, you know, with Samhain and, you know, just at the pinnacle, really, rock was at its popularity in terms of the effect on the culture. Do you guys feel, do you think rock is better at the forefront, you know, where it once was, alongside all the other genres like pop and so forth? Or do you like where it is today, where it's still popular, but, you know, it's in terms of the culture, it's sort of on the outskirts of society compared to when it was, you know, during its infancy? I mean, what's your take on that?
So before I give you my answer, where are you? Where do you live?
Right now, I grew up in New York, but I live out in California, in the San Francisco area.
Oh, San Francisco. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
I go to LA a lot.
Okay.
And it's very interesting. When I go to LA, they have so many rock stations that play songs like you would never hear over here on in the New York tri-state area. Five Finger Death Punch and the Cult and whoever, you know, that rock band may be. They're playing stuff that's more, you know, not mainstream. Over here, I don't even think we have classic rock. Well, what's classic rock? Something from the 2000s, right? Because that's 23 years ago or 20 years ago.
It's all programmed by, you know.
Yeah, I mean, it's all pop and hip hop and whatnot. Now, do I think it's? I don't know if what you're trying to say is rock dead. Is it just an underground thing? I don't think so. You know, I'm blessed with Danzig to be able to play a lot of these festivals, right? And like Aftershock Festival that we played up in Sacramento back in October. And you get 50,000 people there for 3 days to listen to rock bands. That's not showing you it's not dead.
Yeah,
I think we're a product of what the financial people tell you what you're going to hear on the radio, right? So it limits our exposure to everything else. Yeah, we've made it the underground thing that it is, and I don't even want to say underground because there's nothing underground anymore. Growing up in the punk rock scene, that was underground, right? No, you didn't have a chance in hell to get a song on the radio.
Mhm.
I think it's different now. There was no internet radio back then. There was none of this, right?
Mhm.
It was either mainstream or nothing. And you were being spoon-fed in the 70s, 80s, and 90s on what you were going to hear because of the major labels. The great thing what punk rock did was that it established your big independent labels. Look at bands like The Offspring and Rancid, right? They set the tone for what became this bigger thing. It brought that newer punk rock. I'm not talking bands like the Ramones. Bands like the Ramones, which I grew up on, never got the shot that they really deserved.
Sure.
They inspired a lot of people, but so you took it out, and before you knew it, the Offspring, they were on an independent label, and as was Rancid, they were on the same label, and it blew up. And of course, the major labels, I know they bought the Offspring contract, and that continued their success for a while, and that brought it out to the mainstream. Then we had their Nirvanas and whatnot, and then that hip hop was coming up really fast. If we look at the early things like you had your Run DMCs and NWAs and stuff like that. Remember, that was all independent at one point.
Yes.
And and because of the punk rock thing blowing up, I believe that really set the standard, and that's what really drove down your major labels. If you look at the label that we're on, Cleopatra, I mean, they're like the largest indie label in the country. They have thousands of titles, but it's not just metal or rock. I mean, they have everything. They have Engelbert Humperdinck and all kinds of people.
Nancy Sinatra.
Yeah, William Shatner. It runs the gamut.
And the staple singer.
Right. So the great thing, Matt, is while we deem it as underground, I think because at a time in the 70s, 80s, and 90s, new acts were a dime a dozen, right? Now they're a penny for 100. They're all over. By the hit of the mouse, you're sending your music to wherever, through whether it's through iTunes or whatever, Spotify.
A lot of people doing SoundCloud.
Right. And so you have it's all at your fingertips. It's like, who can jump out though, right? Who has the money to jump out to have some staying power? We've seen it with all kinds of bands, whether it's rock, whether it's pop, or whatever you want to call it. You look at bands like Foster the People or whatever, they have their moment, right? It's like going back to the 70s and the one-hit wonders. They're here and they're gone, and then we get spoon-fed in major cities by what the amount of money can push and keep pushing, right? I am a fan of all music. I think all music is great. I don't have to like it, but I respect it. I don't care if you're Justin Timberlake or Justin Bieber, man. This is a hard business, and staying power is not easy. I think if we look at the Justin Biebers of the world, it's like the Kardashians. It's kind of like it's pop culture. In the 70s, we called Justin Bieber David Cassidy. Right? Think about it. David Cassidy in the 70s was huge.
Massive, yeah.
Huge. And every piece of, merchandise and everything. And of course, that lasted only a short amount of time because they didn't have the internet to keep it going. Right. So, and then you had your Leif Garretts and all this stuff. And as they grew older, they just kind of went and they became a nostalgia act.
Tiger Beat magazine.
Right. So today, your Justin Biebers have much more lasting power, right? Because your fans now can grow old with him because of the click of a mouse. And you can just keep, feeding the masses with a click of a mouse. And it's not that it's bad. It's great. Because I'm sure David Cassidy would have had the same staying power if you had that information and that and all that technology at the time.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I think so. Going back to your thing about it being maybe kind of being down low or the underground, there is a glimmer of hope because like I worked with a lot of guys and I used to run a talent show when I was working and things, and seeing kids, younger kids, and I think School of Rock had a lot to do with this, with everybody like learning their mothers and fathers' favorite songs, and it was all kind of like classic rock. And at first, I didn't think it was like oh, come on, why are you guys playing Smoke on the Water? But then you watch them develop over years, and Steve gets to do things with young bands from time to time, and you get to see younger and younger kids developing, and they love rock, they love hard rock, they love metal, they and they're taking that and using that passion. Like all you have to do is look on Instagram and you see all these kids. Like I saw young kids playing Tool, like little kids playing Tool, or playing Rage Against the Machine. Just a kid, and there's like this one little girl, and she's like this big, and the guitar is this big, and she's playing all of these songs, and they're not, and she's like, have to do this because she's so little. But it's that passion that's in the kid to do it. And I think that's going to be that wave is going to continue to roll. It might be just a little ripple now, but I think it's always going to be a current. Somebody's always discovering Led Zeppelin.
Yeah. Well, I think the issue is probably more so that a lot of kids aren't really picking up instruments like they once were. They're picking up the turntable instead because it's easier. Obviously that's what's all over all the social media as being a DJ, star. And it's also obviously easier for the labels to control one person than to have to work through a whole band. So I mean that's something like when I was in Vegas, places where I used to see cover bands or just rock bands or whatever it was. Now it's just all replaced by EDM, DJs and so forth. But I mean, you guys obviously know Steve on the studio and so forth. I mean, I guess that's the other problem too is not only a lot of these kids not picking up instruments, they have a hard time playing with each other. We see all these great, YouTube stars and these virtuosos all over the internet, but a lot of them have a tough time playing in a band. I think we've just seen a lot of the dissolution of the band now, where even just to get, two people in a room to create music is sometimes even a challenge itself. But I mean, do you see any of that with when you work in your studio and recording any of these younger bands at all, Steve?
I recorded this band recently from New Jersey called Chemical X. They're between, I think, 17 and 19 years old.
Okay.
And I can tell you, they remind me when I was a kid. They have this energy. And they're a punk band. But what's great about them is that the punk rock that they're trying to emulate. It's not like the newer stuff like that's been out the past 20 years. They're going back to the 80s. They're going back to the late 70s. These are like the UK punk bands that have influenced these kids, Black Flags and Circle Jerks. That's hard. And they've got that dynamic. They've got that energy. And they're, as a band, they're really together. And I'm seeing that, as Dan said, I'm seeing it more and more and more, which is a great thing.
That's great. Yeah.
It's just a matter of the masses to allow that to come into your house or come over your speakers. I think it's wonderful. I think it's great, and it gives me energy because these kids are just taking it and they're running, they're running down the field, and it's a breath of fresh air. It may be sounding a bit old to me, but it just has such energy, and they have such passion for it that it really, really gives you hope of what's to come.
Yeah, and the mass produced stuff that is always being, programmed and something. I said I worked with teenagers for almost 2 decades, and so you always hear what the latest thing is. And me being having the ears that I have and playing for so long, a lot of stuff was just I'm like I don't get it. But the kids now that are doing stuff like this, people that Steve is working with and some guys that I had helped trying to nurture up and stuff like that, it's that the popular culture, the mainstream stuff doesn't appeal to them. It doesn't touch them. And so they had to go looking for something else that sparked them. When I hear when you hear somebody playing you know, songs from the 70s, classic rock from the 70s. And they're just like, oh, this is great. This is great. You know, and of course, playing those songs when they were hits when I was a teenager, you know, you're just kind of like, really? That's what you want to play? But then you see them grow, you see them develop, and then they come up with their own songs and their own recordings, and they're going out and they're playing gigs and they're traveling around. And it's just that spark, it's that fire. But like I said, the pop stuff, they know it's mass produced. For them, it might be cookie cutter or whatever. And they like, that's not for me. I know what my dad liked. I like what my dad liked, but let me take that and put my interpretation on it and put my spin on it. And they're coming out with some really good stuff.
That's okay. That's great. You guys are giving me hope. Then I'm very hopeful. Yeah.
There's another band, a friend of ours, his daughter. She's 18. They're all girl metal band.
Okay, nice.
And they're like, I don't want to say they're black metal because they're not, but it's interesting. You know, I know the drummer, her idol is Chris Adler, you know, from God. And they're 18 years old. And I saw them the other night and they kicked my ass. Now, again, do I love that type of music? Not particularly. I really appreciate it. You know, it's got the, you know, the vocals, you know, but they're 18 years old and they want to, you know, they believe in this so much and they're going to take it on the road and they're going to book their own tour and they're going to go to these little clubs around the country and play at kids' backyard barbecues during the summer. It's amazing. All right. And if you, you know, out of like, what's that, Berkeley up there where you had AFI is from, right?
Yeah.
AFI, they built their audience on backyard barbecues.
Yeah.
You know, so and they just played the LA Forum the other night.
Yeah.
So you know, and they've had a lot of success over the past 20 years. But you know, it starts with that passion and that drive. And I don't care if it's metal, rock, or whatever, you know, punk. It's, you know, you need that energy, you need that drive, that conviction. And I think there's so much out there. There's so much hope, you know, and basically, you know, it's kind of the Waiting album is there's everything in one in there. There's no dark metal in there, but you never know what we could come up with on the next one.
You don't know. You don't know.
Well, speaking of that, I mean, what's now the plan? Are you guys? Is there any reason, or do you see you guys ever playing a show or a festival, or is it just to continue to maybe
No,
put out new music?
we are just about done with putting the band together.
Oh, okay. Very nice.
We'll start rehearsals, and I've got an agent already looking to book us shows. So we're excited about that. And Wednesday we start filming another video, so that'll be cool for the song Blackout. And so we're really looking forward to that, and just keep the momentum going.
Fantastic.
And playing live, of course, is the best part of the whole thing, right? Yeah. So we'll be coming at you.
Yeah, that's the thing. I love to do the best out of anything that I do or have done. You know, I just love playing, and to be able to go out there. And then I'm really encouraged that, like, our expectations was just like, we know what we did, we like what we did. Since we like it so much, we think that if people get a chance to hear it, they'll like it. And we've already gotten a lot of very good reviews and people telling us what these things mean to them, the feelings and emotions that are evoked from the music. And it's just like, it's great that people get some sort of pleasure or some sort of reaction at it, that they like it. And if we get a chance to take that out in front of live people and play to the best of our ability, I think, it's a great way to reach people, and it's a great way to give people a release, because of everything that's going on in the world. What's better than going out, even if it's a local club, getting smacked in the face a little bit with some music and, enjoying some time out with your friends.
Those are the best ones. Yep.
Yep.
Exactly. Yeah. I absolutely agree. Real quick before we wrap it up, guys, Steve, just real quick, you've got the studio there. I know one of my favorite records from last year was recorded right there. My good buddy Dave Incognito. I know you recorded the guys from Incognito Theory, The Brotherhood. Great record. Love that record. Like I said, the way the sound came out was just fantastic. Is this now something that you're really looking to do more of? Is obviously the studio work? Is that, I mean, how do you balance that really between, I guess, your studio work and your musician?
I'm very selective
studios?
of who I work with, and I've known Dave for a while now, and he had some stuff, and I'm like, all right, let's, I did the EP for them. And he's got a great voice, and the band was great. I brought in the punk band. There's a few others I bring in. I have my old band Morning Noise from the 80s that we kind of reformed when Cleopatra reissued all our old stuff, and they came out with a new EP. It does two things for me. Because in that band I play drums, it keeps my drum chops up, and I get to learn more with recording. And it's a process that you learn different things all the time, and I never tried doing it this way, and you can take chances, right? So but I want to work with people that have that passion, they want to do it, and it's not just that they're doing it just to have a demo or something to play for their friends. If I'm going to invest my time in it, I want to make sure that it's for the goodness of all parties. And it's not about a money thing. I don't really care about that. It's really about my passion for music, my passion for the studio, and definitely wanting to help others. I think this is, there's a lot of potential out there, as we spoke about, the past few minutes. And I think if I can help anybody, I'm here.
Fantastic. Yeah. Well, especially New Jersey, there's such great musicians that come into that state. I mean, I have said that for years. I used to go over there. Forget about New York. Go to New Jersey. That's where the musicians are at, and those good, solid rock bands.
Yeah,
all the time. Absolutely. Well, okay. Once again, guys, the band is, to the listeners and viewers, BLAK 29. The record is The Waiting. It's out now on Cleopatra Records. Hey, guys, go ahead. Let the viewers and listeners know where they can go ahead and purchase the record and just kind of keep up with everything that you got going on with the band musically and all the studio stuff as well.
You can go to CleopatraRecords.com. They're on all streaming platforms.
iMusic, iTunes, Spotify, Amazon.
It's all over the place.
It's everywhere.
Take a listen.
YouTube. The whole album's on YouTube.
Oh, there you go.
Okay. And the album I know is they have it right now in different. I haven't even looked at this one, but they also comes in pretty colors.
Very cool.
Splatter and
Beautiful.
all kinds of fun stuff.
Collector's vinyl.
Yeah.
There you go.
So there's nothing like vinyl, man.
Nothing like it,
But
yeah.
So check us out.
Fantastic.
Here.
All right. I'm sure I guarantee everyone will. Once again, everybody, BLAK 29, The Waiting, out on Cleopatra. And Dan, Steve, thank you guys again for coming on, and good luck. Hope to see you on the road soon.
Absolutely. Thank you, Matt.
All right.